Hello, it's a very wet episode 7 of How to Be an Outsider. I don't know if you can tell which side of me was out while we were recording this episode, but we're here at the BC Interior Forestry Museum as our filming location, so thanks to them so much for having us. We have just had a really beautiful episode with Lys Morton, and some of the topics that we talk about are very moving, and it takes a lot of bravery to put yourself in a vulnerable space to share your story when there's rhetoric in the world that says that your voice doesn't matter and that you don't exist, if we're honest. And so I just want to recognize the power and strength it takes to speak up, particularly when for your job role you're really often interviewing other people and receiving information, and to put Lys in the spotlight and have him share with us and have him bare his soul is a really big deal. And I hope you find this episode as moving and important as I did. Welcome to episode 7, the land of helicopters and rain. So you may get a little background noise here. And I should state that TELUS and the professionals at the StoryHive project categorically discouraged filming outdoors for sound and audio quality. And so we're just trying our very best. And this is the first time we've done this in the rain. And it's quite chilly, but we're doing our best. And I have been looking forward to this episode since the project first popped into my mind. And it's because of you and because of the skills and ways that you participate in our community that have, if I'm honest, inspired me. And all of the people in this podcast I have met in community and are actually, even by one degree of separation, a sense of my belonging here. So you have helped support my lack of outsidership in this place. And I first met you at one of the Indigenous Friendship Society of Revelstoke's events, where we played a game I like to call Terrible Bingo, which was inadvertently bad because I tried to play host bingo with Canadian balls and the spinning deliverer and English British bingo cards, which it turns out are two really different games. And when your grandmother was a professional bingo caller in the UK, Nanny Janet, big her up, and we do things like call out like legs 11 and like number 4, knock on wood, and there's just a sea of blank spaces. What is she doing? Is she having a stroke? And then we realised that a lot of the numbers were in the balls but weren't on the cards. Anyway, it was a nightmare. But you were there, and I think you were reporting, and I think that was when you had just come to town, maybe. And I sat down and talked next to you, sat down next to you, and talked. I was like, okay, I like this person and this is a person I would like to get to know more. And you do such a lot for our community through your work and through your energy and your commitment to stuff. But Lys Morton, thank you so much for being here. And maybe I can pass the mic to you and you can just introduce yourself in a way that feels authentic to you, to tell people a little bit more about you.
And here I'll harken back to that event because it was hilarious. I was talking about it the other day to someone. It is still one of my fondest memories because I was very new to town. I think I was a month in Revelstoke and still trying to understand where I was supposed to be. I wasn't intentionally reporting that day, but go and introduce yourself to community and make connections and stuff like that. And was, sitting there going, hi, my name's Lys with the Revelstoke Mountaineer, and the word vomiting that would follow afterwards as I tried to describe my place in a new community. Since then, the spiel that I give is, my name is Lys Morton. I am the community journalist for Revelstoke Mountaineer. We're one of the papers here in town. I refer to myself as a friendly neighborhood trans guy because I am a dirty Marvel fanboy. And whatever Spider-Man or Winter Soldier or Captain America reference I can throw in, I'll do it. And I former prairie boy, lived on the island for about 10 years, and moved to Revelstoke just over 2 years ago, and have made home here.
And the way you report on this place and the level, I think, of empathy and layered understanding that you bring to your reporting has changed the way that information is shared in this town, by the way. And as someone who works predominantly online I get so many emails a day. I get so much information into my inbox, and your newsletter that you send out, I legitimately read every word. I click on every link. I follow it through. And I don't know, you've had about 25 5-star reviews from me from the little stars at the bottom, and you've never featured me in the feature review. Side eye. But it really is quality. It's such high quality. So thank you for that, firstly. And when you move to this place, it can be quite intimidating, I think. Firstly, you've got all these like pro athletes knocking about. The first time I went skiing, I thought I could ski. I've been skiing my whole life. I went up the ski hill and was like, oh, okay, I'm being schooled, right? I'm not very good. And then, there's lots of fancy clothes about, and there's like a certain level of wealth here that's visible. Anyway, there's layers to our social economic status, but there seems, and there's lots of people who've got groups or existing, and I know some people call it cliquey, and I think all mountain resort places, municipalities have that potential. But I've actually found it welcoming, but it just can be intimidating at first. And how did you overcome that? Was it through the work that you were doing that you were kind of forced to, or how did you start to build those bricks of belonging?
Well, and this is where this gets fun. When I was offered the job with the Mountaineer, I was already working at a sibling publication for the publisher that now owns the Mountaineer, Discourse Community Publishing. I was working out in Nanaimo, and a couple of different things. I went, I think I'm going to apply for this job. And I remember distinctly someone making the comment, hands down, I would go there. It has the best powder in the world. And I had no concept as to what those words meant. There was a couple of other of like, you'll be amazed by the level of outdoorsy, or that, like, there was referencing to sports and worlds and cultures I had no reference for at that point. I was not even aware of those worlds when I moved here. So there is a sense of being a blank slate and just approaching my journalism as to, I am the new person in town. I need to be open to anything and everything. How do I learn as much about this community so that this community can trust me? And in that aspect, falling into many of these circles and worlds. And it is very hard for me to acknowledge and verbalize, but that openness and willingness, seeming to invite folks to bring me into circles. And I do the bad joke of grew up in Calgary. COP was the hill that I snowboarded on once a year. And then really did not snowboard for another 10, 15 years until moving out to here. And to go from COP to Revelstoke is a bit of a difference. And having, like, I had folks on the natural selection team going, oh, you should come out with us. No, that's not going to happen. My job doesn't have enough damage pay to cover that adventure. But it opens doors. And it opens conversations. And I am coming to accept my own openness and participation in community has led to a number of different instances where folks are like, okay, how do we make sure you can be in this space? Which has been so very interesting to observe and be part of, and yet continue to hear from folks, understandably, who are not granted those same spaces, who are really working to find their space in this town, where they belong in this town, where they're supposed to sit in this town. As I continuously state that this town is the safest and most connected I have ever been in my 30 plus years of living.
Wow. You have my feelings lifting out through my eyeballs in the form of tears.
Where's that tissue?
I do. I cry a lot in these, actually. I've been privileged in my life. I am a cisgender, British, white person. And maybe I don't think much because of the spaces I've inhabited and the sort of upbringing I had, but my gender hasn't, I don't think, I haven't faced that much gender discrimination apart from like the casual sexual harassment growing up, which I laugh at. I shouldn't. It's so normalized in our culture. So let me rephrase. I generally feel that I have had a very privileged life and that I have been accepted and welcomed into most of the spaces. But I also recognize when I communicate with other people about it that a lot of my belonging here has come from showing up to community events, getting on the boards of non-profits and trying to support. So there is a little bit of you get out what you put in. And I know for a fact that it's not just that you are promotional as a person, that we're like, oh, the news, we need the news to pick this up. But that when you come into spaces, particularly vulnerable spaces like the one that I sit as a non-Indigenous person within an Indigenous-led organisation, that there are many, many spaces that don't feel safe and secure for them. And that when they see your face there, they feel, and it's been verbalized in our board meetings, that there is like a breath out of relaxation of going, okay, this person is a kind person, this person is a thoughtful person, and we know that we're not going to be misrepresented or misquoted and things. So that's beautiful. to see all of those layers sort of unfold in the spaces. And you said about circles and like interconnecting circles. The Venn diagram is wild. And people say to me, "Got a lot of fingers, a lot of pies," and I was like, it's more just like interconnecting circles. And I think if you do open yourself here, the possibilities are endless for how you can connect into different layers of this culture, because it initially looks like it's just sports and extreme, but there's also a lot of love. And we're going to talk to people that work with the outdoors here. We're going to talk about resource. There's a huge population demographic through this town. There's a lot of love. And so, and I love that you share that with people through the work that you do reporting as a journalist. So when we talk about going to a new place and finding your place, and perhaps some haven't or are still searching and seeking, and I was actually reminded of a song. I don't know if you've ever heard the Wear Sunscreen song. It's a 90s classic. Baz Luhrmann, the film director who directed the redoing of Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio and someone else. I was quite obsessed with him at the time. It was a while back. His song basically just says that all these layers of life, you know, are stress. And the real stress is the stuff that like hits you out of the middle of nowhere and brings things to you that you never had expected. All this stuff we worry about, what we look like, what we sound like, what we're dressed like, don't really matter. And nobody actually cares that much. But if people are searching, this is the actual quote, and he says, "Some of the most interesting people I know didn't know what they wanted to be when they were 20. And the most interesting people I know are 40 plus and they still don't know what they want to be." They're just living and experiencing and growing and shifting and evolving. So my understanding is that a lot of folks in the queer community, whether they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, two-spirited, queer, or plus, however that shows up for them, avoid small mountain towns because there is a conception of them being small-minded or more traditional. And I'm wondering how Revelstoke, because this is what the podcast is about, is this place, how that has that shown up for you, or has there, you know, what's the queer community like here? And like, if with my little heterosexual hat on, like, is the queer community just like one of us? And like, how does that show up here?
And it's been a conversation. I won't speak on behalf of organizations in town here who are trying to navigate that turnover that happens in small mountain towns. You get that perfect combo of 4 people who can organize every event, get this all sorted, and then 3 of them decide to go plant trees for a year. And the energy dissipates. And it is a conversation I'm getting to watch in this town of, yes, there is a community here and we want to be connected with each other, providing resource for each other, getting to hang out for like a crafted skate night together. How do we maintain that energy and that resource, even as people navigate in and out of these mountain towns? And yes, in larger urban communities, you have staying power. You have these either older institutions that have been operating since the 80s and such like that, or you have, all right, cool, we see a need and response coming down the pipeline in 5 years. Let's start the groundwork now. Versus, at least what I've seen in kind of smaller communities, that flash in the pan moment. And while while yes, I have been able to connect with that community out here, and we see each other around town, and there is hugs and, hey, how are you doing? And these flash moments. We are still navigating the conversation of, okay, how do we create those solid foundations, which I don't think is unique to that community. I see in my reporting and also just in existing in this town, I'm seeing that in so many different spaces. Mm-hmm. That trying to, where are the resources available for the need? And how do we make this stick long term?
I definitely see that play out with young people having access to resources to develop and build themselves, particularly in their teen years, in those really sort of challenging, changing years. I definitely see it for the community of people with disabilities who are looking for resources. And as I do my postgrad to become a sexual health educator at the moment, what is becoming evident in that work is that a lot of the resources are really aimed, and the education, if you're getting it at all, is really aimed at heterosexual people, and that we don't talk about queer sex safety, and we don't talk about how relationships and dynamics might show up differently, and what specific resources we might need. It's also for the disabled community as well. So I'm working on that for Revelstoke personally, just as a thinking process. But I think, and this is it, and I do this as well, despite somewhat deep understanding of working in lots of different spaces, is that we tend to just sort of, it's easy if we could just put people into boxes. Mm. It's easy if we could just put all the Indigenous people over here and you all think and look and feel a certain way. Like it's nonsense. That's not how humanity works. And so the complexity and layers of belonging, visibility, feeling that you have representation, but also not wanting to have to stand out all the time, not wanting to have to constantly advocate, not wanting to, just be a part of things without having to be separate, but also needing special moments in order to uplift voices that have been suppressed or oppressed. I feel like that's a constant balancing act in order that folks feel like they belong.
I was just having this conversation hours ago.
Cool.
The only trans representation I had growing up until I was in the only representation I was accessing or aware of growing up until I was probably in my late 20s was Brandon Tina and the movie Boys Don't Cry. It is not the happiest representation to see yourself in. And even now I grapple with this back and forth conversation of, I so very desperately want to be the queer normalcy for that younger trans kid to see. Oh my God, he's some random 30-year-old guy who's working in town and drinks at conversations all the time. Just doing his stuff. And showing them a future that I could not imagine. That I'm still trying to imagine and figure out what that looks like for the next 2, 5, 20 years. Mm-hmm. Navigating that desire with also, I work full time and I'm helping with a whole bunch of other things and I need to go home and nap and have my cats on top of me and just desperately wishing to exist as opposed to showcase. And it is that I think it's a conversation that goes back to resourcing. Desperately wanting to be that resource for 8-year-old little Lys who had nothing. And also still trying to understand what resources I need now. And what community I need now. And where I get to exist now.
Yeah, I've seen myself represented in every kid's book, everything. And we did a whole piece for that course I'm on around puberty books, right? And we had to review different books, and there's actually some great resources coming up for young trans kids and non-binary kids and kids who don't just fit. And the language we're using is changing in some spaces, in very more sex positive and educational spaces, but if one kid, and I have this in the other lessons that I get to share with kids, but when I have had that one kid where I'm teaching at school and it's break time and all the teachers go in and into the break room and I just sit outside on a bench, and there's always one kid who's just like wants to come and talk, or is on their own, or just like needs someone to sit and just needs an ear, or a role model, or a friendly word. Like you just don't know the impact that you're going to make when somebody sees that, and how somebody's life that you legitimately might save. And so when I see people getting upset on social media about visibility, it makes me really sad, because trans kids exist and they deserve to be seen and cared for like every other human being. And so yes, that hits home. The final thing I want to talk about is bringing it back to this sort of nature. So I have an amazing educator friend. Her name's Julie Reed, and she's a queer woman, and she does this amazing workshop, professional development workshop for educators about the queerness of nature, about basically how it's like binary sex doesn't exist, and sexual dimorphism, and the fact that many, many different species exhibit all kinds of queerness, and it's actually the norm, actually, like if you really look at it measured out and on scale. And so for me, the mountains, the environment, honestly, a feeling of whizzing when I go quite fast, all of the constant thoughts running through my head quieten, because I have to focus, because otherwise I'm going to eat it and hit my head really hard. So for me, despite being privileged and all the things, like growing up in a place where I didn't feel like I belonged, where I was bullied mercilessly for, quite honestly, what was being an authentic version of myself. I also had like horrible stuff going on at home that I could not share, because I lived in a place where we didn't talk about that. So you're just trying to be authentic, but also presenting a front of like, everything's fine, I'm fine. And I just have had so much therapy. Everybody should get therapy. Just, if you're looking for the answer, it's therapy. But the mountains, nature, being outside have given me a great sense of belonging, because even if I fall over, or even if I'm not very good, or even if I'm bloody exhausted and I'm tired on the skin track, or something happens, I've found my way out, and I've found my strength somewhere inside of me. And I wonder, just for you on a personal level, just to close us out, on how have you transformed from being an outsider to being an outsider? Like, how do you fit? Like, what do you feel when you're there? And what good has come of this?
now I'm mulling trying to think of what sport to fixate on. The bad joke was, again, no concept of what good powder is. What's champagne powder? I'd imagined that I would move here and sit in my trailer and read my books and hang out with my cats. And that's where I was supposed to be. And there is multitude of layers of gender euphoria and reclaiming space and reclaiming a body I don't have a good relationship with. In snowboarding, in mountain biking, in paddleboarding, as kind of these three main elements, I have been able to, find community and space and folks that just want to go out with me and do this stuff. Let's go throw ourselves down the mountain. Let's go have a good time. Let's go find a trail. And also, like, I cannot emphasize enough the way that I am relearning body and relearning play, which was a rave I went on the other day here of, as a kid who very early age did not feel home in his body, did not feel safe in his body, to finally give that little kiddo a chance to go snowboard down the hill and crash into the side of the hill. And your buddy is laughing because he's gotten to watch the most spectacular crash he has seen all season. It still remains on his highlight reel. You get to go out with the Pedal and Pints crew and laugh that we were all wearing helmets, which, if anyone is familiar with Revelstoke, is a rarity to see that many bike riders all with helmets on. If I can be on a soapbox for a half second here.
Yes.
The layers of safety and acceptance I have found from the land in this place. There will never be enough thanks that I get to be in this land. I get to have a relationship with these mountains, with these trails, with this river. And I get to find safety and growth in these lands. That it has given me the grace to fall down and into a bush and pick my bike back up and crawl my way back onto the trail. And sit in that nature for a second and reground and find safety and find the body again before heading off to the next adventure.
Oh, I love that so much. I could just, one of my Indigenous mentors, Jenna Jassic, I can just hear her. She's just like, yes, yes, the ancestors celebrate you. That's what she always said. She said, and the land doesn't judge. The land doesn't care if your body looks a certain way, feels a certain way, or is good or bad at the sport you're doing. The land is just like, oh, I'm getting to spend time with you. What a gift. And it fills me with joy that there are spaces that you learn to love your body. I do think we exist in a society that does a lot of judging of people's bodies, and particularly more and more through AI and filters, where we really don't know what people look like online, and people are constantly bombarded with images from the outside. And then the internal relationships we have with self, and I cannot begin to understand the complexities of dysphoria. I can't. I can try and sit here and think, but my goodness, how challenging that must be to come through that and still show up and keep relearning and keep giving yourself to spaces. It's enormous strength. It's enormous strength, and I have so much respect for it. I have an enormous amount of respect for you as a human. I think the way you move through life and the conversations we've had on dog walks, drinking coffee and eating cookies, are ones that have helped me broaden my worldview and broaden my understanding of different people's ways of experiencing the world. And you've definitely had an impact on my ability to empathise. I didn't grow up in a very empathetic environment. That's a learned thing for me. And so I've really appreciated your patience and your grace in our conversations as I navigate how to communicate in a way that is more inclusive and kinder and warmer for folks, because I really want everyone to belong. And I'm very grateful for you for all of those things and for agreeing to share with me, us, and everyone watching.
I have a thrifted ski suit that I quite often wear when I go out snowboarding. Shout out to Revelstoke thrift stores. We adore. And someone commented last year, it's so plain, it doesn't match you. And I've mulled over the summer of like, all right, I've got enough acrylic paints. We could gussy this thing up somehow, right? And again, that balancing act of part of me wanting to like trans flag a whole entire arm, so that on a mountain as vast as Mount Mackenzie is, to still see that snippet of representation falling his way down a blue run. And the small bit of hesitancy I've had, scared to out myself that constantly. And I want... There's very specific folks in this town. I hope they know who they are, who continue to show me the safety that I have access to. I know not everybody does. The safety that they provide that could maybe help support a goofy art project on the arm of a ski suit before opening day here. Whenever opening day actually happens.
It's been an absolute delight, as always. I love hanging out with you, and I can't wait to fall down the mountain with you. We have to make that happen, 100%. Thank you, Lys. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You need a hug. No.